We're still talking about the top 25 Blue Jackets under the age of 25, and today we're getting into the big guns with the 10 through 6 ranked players.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also have to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. We're back with our top 25 under 25 today. I originally was going to do 10 through 1 today and just finish it off. And then I looked at the players and was like, I'm going to want to spend more than 3 minutes on average talking about a bunch of these guys. So today's part 3, we're going to start with 10, go all the way down to the 6th ranked player, and then either tomorrow or Monday, depending on when I find time to record next, we will do 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And, you know, by the end of today, obviously everyone will know that, you know, who those top 5 guys are. But let's get into it. Let's get into the top 10. 10th overall in the top 25 under 25 is the newest addition to the list, I think. Jackson Smith, obviously just drafted 14th overall. Played for the Tri-City Americans for the past 3 seasons, or two and a bit seasons, and is going to go to Penn State University in the NCAA, which I think is a great move. You know, we're going to talk about this with another player as well, of the decision to go from the WHL to the NCAA. And I like this move a lot. I think this is a great decision. You know, not for every player, but I do think that for players who have excelled in the WHL, it makes sense for them to want to step up, play a little bit of a different game, play fewer games, but have more of a pro-like off-ice experience, I guess. You know, the training, the coaching and everything, I feel like is better in the NCAA. You're not playing as many games, but that's what you give up for, you know, that's what you give up when you go to the NCAA. You play less games, but you're playing a higher quality of hockey, I feel like. Maybe that's controversial, I don't know. But Jackson Smith is, it's not a case of if, I think it's a case of when. Since he was drafted, I've watched a bunch of his tape. And again, I'm really, really excited to see how he does in the NCAA coming up. He's going to be playing with Gavin McKenna, which is going to be a lot of fun for him, I'm sure. There's a handful of other notable prospects that have gone to the NCAA, but I think Gavin McKenna is probably the biggest name, right? So I can only imagine that, you know, Jackson Smith is probably going to have about a bajillion assists this season on McKenna goals, in a very similar way that Stanislav Svozil really, really had fun playing with Connor Bedard when they were both in Regina a few years back, right? That's not to say that Smith is not good all on his own, right? Like he was excellent for the Tri-City Americans this year, had 54 points in 68 games as a defenseman. Is a extremely good two-way guy as well. Like, it's not all about the points with him, and I think that's what's going to be really interesting to look at with Smith moving to the NCAA. Is he going to be able to keep up putting up points and developing his defensive game? Because I do think the defensive game is the thing that has some more refining to do. I think his decision making has some refining to do, and again, I think that's something that's really going to help in the NCAA. You're playing against older players. You're playing against players who have been playing for, you know, slightly longer at this level. You know, I think you can be up to 24 or 25 in the NCAA, whereas you're only playing against 20-year-olds, sometimes 21-year-olds in the CHL, right? So he's going to be taking that step up, playing against different players, playing in slightly different systems, and I think it's going to be sink or swim, and I really like it's going to be swim, right? Excellent skater, like really creative, but needs to figure out a way to rein that creativity in a little bit. Sometimes I think like he does a little bit too much. But all in all, a really, really, really solid defensive prospect. Immediately the best defensive prospect that the Blue Jackets have. If we count Denton Matejchuk out of the prospect conversation, which I think, some people say 25 games, some people say 50, some people say first full NHL season, blah, blah, blah. I'm counting Matejchuk as not a prospect anymore. He is a full-time NHLer. And so Jackson Smith, immediately the best defenseman, the best defensive prospect that this team has, which is really fun. If only he played on the right side, because I do think a Smith-Matejchuk future pairing would just kick absolute amounts of butt, right? Gonna be a process. Not expecting to see Jackson Smith for at least a couple of seasons. Like my guess is at least one full season in the NCAA. Depending on how he adapts there, I could see him going back for another year and then signing his ELC at the end of the 26-27 season, I believe it is. I don't have the calendar in front of me. Next season, this season coming up to 25-26. So 26-27, I think is going to be the earliest we see Jackson Smith, similarly to, Cayden Lindstrom, who we're going to talk about at some point in the remainder of this list. We haven't talked about him yet. It's a process, right? You're not rushing him. He's not pro ready yet. Like I said, the decision making still has to come along. I think there's a little bit of like maturity, like physically. He still has to put not put some pounds on, but I think he's got a little bit of filling out to do. He's not necessarily like a string bean, but I think it's going to be interesting again to see with the Penn State training whether he can become more physically mature than he was this year in the WHL. But that's Jackson Smith, really, really exciting player. Not going to see him anytime soon, I don't think, but I'm fine with that. I would rather take my time and not rush, or take the time to not rush him, than rush him into the NHL and ruin him, which I think is potentially what happened with David Jiricek. But I'm not going to talk about David Jiricek today. Next guy on my list, so number 9, is Cole Sillinger, who feels like he shouldn't be on this list, right? He is only 22 years old. Like, he turned 22 in May. He has been in the NHL for 4 full seasons now. His rookie season was all the way back in the 21-22 season. And since then, he's played, like I said, 4 full seasons. He's had some up and downs. Seems like he's kind of figured it out, and has settled into a really promising middle six center / forward. I could see them moving him to wing this upcoming season, but I don't think we've hit his peak yet. I think he's still got growing to do. And again, he's coming up on I think he's hit 250 NHL games already before he turned 22. He's at 286. So in about 2 weeks into the regular season, he'll have hit 300 NHL games, and he'll be again 22 years old, which is insane. And I still think he's got something to give. I don't think he's peaked. I think we've mostly seen what he is, right? I don't think he's got much more of a ceiling to hit. But in terms of, and when I say that, what I mean is I don't think we're going to see him jump to being a legitimate full-time top 6 guy, right? But a guy that can play third-line center or second-line wing, depending on what the game needs from him, that to me feels like that's Cole Sillinger. Like that's where he's going to stick. Probably third line more than second line, which I'm absolutely fine with. I'd rather have a really good third line than a just okay second line. But we've seen him refine his game. We've seen him become a solid two-way guy. Obviously, the big thing for him in junior was his shot, his goal-scoring ability, right? He had 24 goals in 31 games with the USHL in his draft year. He had 22 goals in 48 games with the Medicine Hat Tigers the year before that. Like, scoring, obviously it doesn't translate 1-to-1, but I do think there is, a 20 to 25 goal potential for Cole Sillinger. He's not shooting the puck as much as he should be, and I think that's, he's done a lot of work becoming a good two-way center that I think the offense has dropped a little bit. And I do think there is a lot more offense for him there, which is really exciting, right? Like that's what you should be excited about is, okay, he's figured this out. What next? And I think what next for him is to take those steps forward offensively. He's improved, incrementally, basically every season. If you take the 22-23 season out, which was kind of miserable for literally everyone, he had 31 points in his rookie season. 23-24, he had 32 points in 2 fewer games. This most recent season, he had 33 points in 66 games, so about a half a point a game, which is what a 41-point pace in all 82 games. I think that there is a 50 to 60-point player there. Just got to figure it out, and I think that's what's next for me is Cole Sillinger figuring out how to be an impactful player on offense while not giving up the two-way game that he has kind of been developing the last couple of years. Also, face-offs. But that's true of basically any young center, right? Like face-offs are a thing that you've got to figure out, and I think he's getting close to figuring them out. So I see a Boone Jenner type player in Cole Sillinger's future, which is not a bad thing at all. But we'll see. That's my feelings on this. 9th overall feels about right for him. I might bump him up a couple of places, but I'm not going to sit here and split hairs about the difference between 9th overall and 7th overall, right? Let's take a quick break, and then we're going to go back to talking about some prospects, and we're going to talk about the final Luka in the organization. We've got Luka Del Barbaloos is up next, 8th overall on the Locked On Blue Jackets, top 25, under 25. First, I've got to tell you about Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. And that's where Game Time comes in. They make getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime. And with their killer last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% off. Game Time also has something called Zone Deals, which automatically picks the best seats in the section for you, which means that you don't have to endlessly scroll trying to find the best tickets or the best seats or the best view. They will do it for you. And if you want to know what your view is going to look like before you buy, then the app will show you a panoramic seat view, so you don't have to be surprised by, a big metal pillar being in your way or anything like that, which is great. I have been in that position where I buy a ticket for something and it's a restricted view, or I have to crane my neck to see anything. And with Game Time, I don't have to worry about that anymore. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're doing the top 25 under 25. We're doing 10 through 6 today. We've done 10. It's Jackson Smith. 9 is Cole Sillinger. 8, Luka Del Barbaloos. Now, Luka Del Barbaloos kind of came out of nowhere this season, I feel like. He was a guy that was a very, very good player in juniors, was excellent for the Mississauga Steelheads, got traded to the Sarnia Sting, and was excellent for them as well. In his final season, he had 87 points in 66 regular season games, split between Mississauga and Sarnia. Comes in, rookie season with the Cleveland Monsters, great, 31 points in 58 games as a rookie season. As a rookie is great. This last season, gets called up to the NHL when Sean Monahan goes down with that injury, and they put him in on the second line, because why not, right? And he thrives there. Also, I feel like it's important to mention that at the time he was called up from the AHL, he was, I believe, leading the league in scoring. So they called him up. He fell off a little bit after he got sent back down, which is understandable, I think. The Monsters, almost exclusively, to a man, struggled at the back half of the season. They started strong and kind of flat-founded towards the end there. But Luka Del Barbaloos was, even with that slump at the end, he still had 53 points in 61 games for the Monsters, including 27 goals. And almost 30 goals in a season is hard to score in the AHL. So, and he's doing all of this as a 21-year-old. Like, he turns 22 in November. So again, still extremely, extremely young. A second round pick in 2022. I thought that we would have a longer to wait before Del Barbaluz was ready to make an impact. Apparently not. The thing I love about Del Barbaluz is that he was put in a position to succeed and he took advantage of that, right? And, I've talked about it a lot on this podcast about, the difference between how his early NHL call-up was handled versus someone like, Trefik Swansky, for example, who was an excellent, excellent AHL player, got called up to the NHL and didn't really manage to make his mark because he was playing 8 minutes a night on the fourth line, and that's not the kind of game that he plays, right? Luca Del Barbaluz called up, immediately put him in the top 6. I think he and Cole Sillinger kind of flipped the 2C, 3C spots, but for the most part, I feel like Del Barbaluz played in the top 6, had real line mates, and again, thrived from that. He had 8 points in 15 games in that call up, which I think is pretty solid for a guy like Del Barbaluz. And for me, he is knocking on the door to be a full-time NHL player. We talked about this on Wednesday's episode, I believe, about who did we talk about? Oh, Mikhail Pucha, we were talking about, not on Wednesday, on the bonus episode, his new contract. I was like, I knew we were talking about it sometime, but we talked about this with Mikhail Pucha, right? There's a hole in the bottom 6. The bottom 6 for the Blue Jackets forward group is set in pencil right now. There is absolutely a world where Luca Del Barbaluz comes in and takes a job from someone like a Miles Wood, right? Ostensibly, there's a world where he comes in and takes a job from someone like Isaac Lindstrom. I think that's less likely, but Luca Del Barbaluz is going to be tough to send back down, I think. If he comes into training camp with the energy that he had during his call-up last season, it's going to be hard to send him back down to the Monsters. I think they probably will, just because of, waivers eligibility and stuff like that. But, honestly, there's a world where he comes in and they're like, we keep looking for reasons to get rid of you, and we aren't finding them, right? So, Del Barbaluz, again, I'm a huge fan of his game. I think it translates to the NHL really well. And it's not a case of if he becomes an NHL player, it's when. And I think it's going to be this season. I think he's probably a middle 6 guy, tops out at, probably a really good third liner as opposed to an okay second liner. But it's a matter of time. And I think it's probably the first injury, knock on wood, this team has in the forwards. It's going to be Del Barbaluz getting called up, and he's probably going to make a good enough case that he's just going to be an NHL player now, which I am all for. Let's talk about another prospect in Cayden Lindstrom, who I could have seen him, I had him in my top 5. I know some people had him all the way down in the mid-20s. When I say mid-20s, I mean 23, 24, 25-ish. I had him in my top 5 for, I think fairly obvious reasons. There are still question marks with him, right? The injury is big. Losing an entire year of development is not nothing. However, I watched him in the playoffs with Medicine Hat. I watched him in the World Juniors showcase that they did in Canada a couple of weeks ago. I have talked to scouts and prospect experts and, people familiar with him as a player. And I think he's back, guys. I think we're going to see the Cayden Lindstrom we saw before the injury. And that is huge, right? Because if you get the Cayden Lindstrom from before the injury. So he suffered that injury at the beginning of the 23-24 season, right? So before, not very far into that season, he ended up coming out of the lineup with an injury when he broke his hand. So he played 32 games with that bad back and still had 46 points in those 32 games, right? Had 4 points in the playoffs that he's just, it was a point a game in the playoffs, Medicine Hat, when he came back. He only played those 4 games. Which was the WHL final. I'm really, really excited to see what he does at Michigan State. Again, similar to Jackson Smith, he's getting some really fun players to play with. Porter Martone, who just went 5th, overall or 6th overall, I believe, in the most recent NHL draft is going to be there. And like that to me is a duo that's just going to beat the crap out of other, opposing NCAA teams. So really, really excited about that. But like, yes, it sucks that he missed that entire year. Yes, I still think there are question marks about Lindstrom. But the longer, like, the more you watch him playing now, and again, if he can make it through this entire NCAA season, like, fully healthy, then, like, this is huge for the Blue Jackets, because I've seen a lot of people talk about this as a wasted pick, or should have taken Demidov, or should have traded the pick, or et cetera, right? If Lindstrom hits, he is going to hit. And I hope you can hear the capital H in that. Having a Fantilli and a Lindstrom as their 1-2 punch down the middle, and by the time he's ready to step in, Sean Monahan as your 3C. Like again, like Jackson Smith, it's going to be a couple of years. My guess is you don't see Cayden Lindstrom as an NHL regular until 2027. I'm fine with that. He is going to rock the league. It's all very well good saying, well, look at the impact that Demidov's having right now. Well, he's played 6 NHL games. If West, well, let's have this conversation at the end of next season, right? When we've seen a full season of Demidov and seen what he's done, and a full season of what Cayden Lindstrom's going to do with the NCAA, right? Like, I don't know. I get the comparison. I like Demidov a lot. I probably would have advocated for drafting Demidov, but we don't know the conversations that happened behind closed doors. At the time, the Blue Jackets had a glut of wingers and not enough centers. There was no guarantee that Demidov wanted to come to Columbus. It sounds like he wanted to be in Montreal, similar to how Michkov wanted to be a Flyer, et cetera, right? Like, there's no point speculating on this kind of stuff. But if Lindstrom is the player that he was in his draft year before he was injured, this is huge. Like, I don't think he's going to be a Fantilli level good, but he is a player that has the potential to be like, and I'm not going to I'm not comparing these two players. I'm not comparing, Adam Fantilli to Sidney Crosby. I'm straight up not doing it. But there is a world where Fantilli Lindstrom becomes that like Malkin, that Crosby Malkin duo, right? Of you put your first line out against Crosby and you're like, okay, fine, we're done with Crosby, and then Malkin steps on the ice and you're like, well, now we have to deal with this guy, right? There's a world where that is Fantilli and Lindstrom in 5 years time, maximum. And that's really, really exciting. I'm a huge Lindstrom fan. I really, really hope he pulls it together in the NCAA and really, really succeeds there. And I think he will. I think his game is built for the NCAA. And again, like, chances are, like, you could see Lindstrom in a Blue Jackets jersey by the end of this upcoming season. If he really, really kills it at the NCAA and they think he's ready to make that step pro, like, he'll be 20 by February, so not eligible to be in the AHL this upcoming season. But by the time he finishes at the NCAA, he's going to be old enough to make the move to the AHL. And if you have to put him in the AHL for a season, then do that. Like, I'm not opposed to it. A lot of people think that the AHL is like not a punishment necessarily, but like oh well, you're not good enough for the NHL, so just stay there for whatever reason. Like, the AHL is a development league. Put Lindstrom there for half a season, see how it goes. If you want to call him up, call him up. But I could see it being 1 year in NCAA, 1 year at AHL, and then 2027 exploding into the NHL and just being an absolute monster. Like, that's my prediction for Lindstrom. Like I said, I had him in my top 5. 7 feels low to me. I had him ranked both above the player we're going to talk about in a minute, and also the player that is ranked at 5th on the consensus. But like, 7th overall is, for a guy that missed an entire year of development, like 7th overall. Again, I'm not willing to split hairs about 5th overall versus 7th overall, right? So that's Lindstrom. Really, really huge fan of his. Really, really excited to see him play regularly, and I really hope he pops at MSU this season. We're crossing our fingers here at Locked On Blue Jackets. We're going to take another quick break, and then we're going to talk about the 6th ranked player on the top 25 under 25 list, and that's Yegor Chinakhov. So we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about FanDuel because August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before Week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Crown your champion in August. I honestly, you could do worse than bet on the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. That feels like a pretty safe bet to me. If you want to be, if you want to go for a long shot or a hot take, that's fine. But honestly, for me, you bet it's to win the Super Bowl, you got to beat the Chiefs, right? And very few teams do that. So that's my pick for winning the Super Bowl. As much as I hate it, because I do dislike the Chiefs as someone who only knows a little bit about football. But that's my pick. It's not a fun one, but I do think it'll be an accurate one. Visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning your futures bets now because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're almost done with our top 25 under 25. There's only 6 players left. We're going to do one more player today, and then the last 5 we're going to do in the next episode. We're going to talk about Yegor Chinakhov now, who I put this list together a couple of weeks ago and was like, they're absolutely going to move him either just before I record or just after I record. So, if you want a weekend news dump, watch out. But I've been a huge advocate for Yegor Chinakhov basically since his rookie season, right? He was a guy, he was an overager. He was drafted in his second go round. No one knew who this guy was except for Jarmo Kekalainen. And then he came into the NHL and has been the kind of the epitome of potential that keeps falling short, right? The biggest issue is that he can't seem to stay healthy. He's never played a full 82-game season. His career high is 62 games, which he did in his rookie season back in 21-22. Since then, he played 30 games, 53 games, and another 30 games, including a couple of stints in the Cleveland Monsters in that time. So, partially injuries, partially being sent down, things like that. But, he joined the team the same time, near enough, as Cole Sillinger, right? Cole Sillinger has 282, 284 NHL games. In the same time frame, Chinakhov only has 175 NHL games. So that's the big knock for me. And again, when he puts it together and when he's on, he's great, right? The first 21 games of this season, he had 14 points. He was on that top line with Monahan and Marchenko. For the first month of the season or whatever, they were one of the most dominant lines in the NHL in terms of the underlying stats and also just pure scoring. Got injured, came back, clearly wasn't right, and now has asked for a trade out of Columbus. Sounds like it's a coaching issue. I still don't know. I go back and forth on they can figure it out versus move him versus keep him and let his value go up, trade him at the deadline, trade him at the end of next season. You've still got him for a year. He's under team control. Don't move him just because he wants to be moved, right? And I felt a similar-ish way about Patrik Laine as well, right? Who very loudly asked out of Columbus last offseason. And I think that it's not a one-to-one comparison, right? But I did wonder at the time, is this a relationship that can be fixed between Laine and the team? And it turns out that no, bringing in a new GM and a new coach wasn't going to fix the relationship with Laine. Off he went. Blue Jackets lose that trade. Whatever. The Chinakhov thing, I think, might be fixable. I think part of his issue is that he wasn't getting ice time, which I think is something that you have to earn. And I understand him being frustrated by not getting the ice time when he came back from his injury, but he clearly wasn't 100%, clearly wasn't playing up to his potential. But for me, that's, well, why is he in the lineup? If he's too injured to make an impact, why is he in the lineup, right? you shouldn't have put him back in the lineup if he wasn't ready to go. Sounds like he wasn't ready to go, and then they put him in the fourth line, played him for 8 minutes, and then we're like, well, clearly he's not doing anything, as if, putting a offensively driven player in the fourth line to play a checking role and play a defensive role, like, obviously that's not working, right? So if he comes into training camp healthy and like ready to work, like there is a space in the top 6 for him. And I do think that if you can make that top 6 space for him and he earns it and can stick there, then I wonder if he'll decide, actually, I do want to stay, especially because I feel like this is the second time this happened, right? It was Dmitry Voronkov's rookie season. The rumors came that Voronkov wanted to go back to Russia because he was homesick, right? And he wasn't having a good time, and the team kind of rallied around him and, made an effort, and he was like, oh, actually, I want to stay. I feel like around about that time, there was rumors that Chinakhov had asked for a trade because he wasn't happy with his playing time. He got more playing time and suddenly was happy about it, right? So I do wonder if that's a similar thing of, is this a gambit to get more playing time? Maybe. But Chinakhov, again, when he's healthy, he's great. He's just not healthy often enough to be an impact player, which is annoying, because I do think that if you put that line to get back together, if Chinakhov, Monahan, Marchenko, that was a great line. You put him on the second line with Fantilli and Kent Johnson. I think that could also be a really great line, right? Like there's solutions here to the top 6, and I think Chinakhov could be one of those solutions if he sticks around long enough. I had him ranked below Lindstrom and below Del Belbelouz. I like him as a player a lot. I don't know that, we're rapidly approaching, and this sounds silly to say because, again, he's 23 years old. 24 years old. So turns 25 in February. We are approaching what should theoretically be the beginning of his peak, right? And if 24, 25 and he hasn't hit, probably he's not going to. Again, all the potential in the world. Can he put it together? Can he keep it together? Can he stop getting injured? Like that's the big thing for me. And I think we're reaching the end of potential with Chinakhov, and more, this is just what he is, which is frustrating because I do think that there is something there, but we are running out of time for him to be able to implement that, B, for it to be worth the sunk cost, right? So I go back and forth on whether he's going to be a Blue Jacket by the start of training camp. Sounds like Don Waddell continues to try and make some moves. He obviously wants a goalie. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with Chinakhov. I would like to see him on the team in October. I like him as a player. Again, I think if he can put it together, then there's a pretty solid top 6 forward there. But there is also the argument that, what you have instead of a top 6 forward is, a Liam Foodie, who is another, first round pick that didn't work out, or a Marco Dano, or a Kirby Reichel, or a Sonny Milano, or etc. Right? I'm not convinced that Chinakhov is a long-term Blue Jacket anymore. I would like him to be, but I think probably not. Really all depends on, we're running out of time for that off-season trade. I think training camp starts in like 3 weeks, which feels insane. Preseason starts in about 6 weeks, maybe less than that. 5 or 6 weeks. We're running out of time for an off-season trade. So show up to training camp. Work hard. Play your way out of this team, right? Or play your way into the top 6 spot that you think you deserve on this team, right? Like, it's all up to you. And I do think that Don Waddell is not, again, we've talked about this before, for better or worse, Don Waddell moves at his own pace, and that pace is pretty slow. And, that has good things and bad things, right? He doesn't rush into things, but he also misses out on things because he's not fast enough to make that move, right? And the player goes somewhere else or whatever. I don't know what the answer with Chinakhov is. He will still, I believe, be... Oh, no, he won't be. He will age out of this list by the time we do this again next year, but again, there's a promising player there. I just think we're running out of time for him to show us what that promise is. So that I had him ranked lower than a couple of younger, more promising players, but obviously, he's a legitimate NHLer, right? Probably a middle sixer if we're talking about it, and that's not nothing. So that's Chinakhov. Would really, really love him to put it together this season. I'm not convinced yet that he will. So we'll see how it goes. That's all I've got for today. Potentially tomorrow, if I can carve out some time to record, we'll finish this off. If not, it'll be Monday's episode, but we're going to go through, we're going to do the top five, we're going to do the top 5 Blue Jackets under the age of 25 in the next episode. I'm pretty sure you can guess who those 5 guys are. It's the 5 that we haven't talked about yet that are on the team. So we'll do that in the next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode, for making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Thank you once again for listening, and until tomorrow, or potentially until Monday, make sure you stay locked on.